So my name is Dan. I have a Facebook page and a YouTube channel called Not So Silent. I'm here today with Andrew, who was in the news not too long ago, in January 2016, about a arrest that happened to him, and he is going to just briefly sort of give us the details on that right now. If you want to just go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was one of the nights I was working a night shift at work, so I was biking home from work along Mackenzie Avenue when this cop pulled me over. And he pulled me over by actually driving into the bike lane. So let's keep that in mind. He apparently safely pulled me over by driving his car into the bike lane of an oncoming cyclist. And this was apparently safe, according to him. And immediately got out of his car and immediately demanded my ID. To which, naturally, I'm saying, what the hell, man? So, of course, I started questioning why he requires my ID. He explained that he was investigating a fire in the area, to which I told him that's absolutely fine. You want to ask me questions about that, go right ahead. I didn't mind cooperating and answering questions about an investigation. I mean, obviously, at that point, he pulled me over concerning that investigation. But what he refused to answer is why he immediately required my ID, or to confirm whether or not I was in fact under suspicion for the crime he is investigating. The video on YouTube, my Saanich police encounter, clearly shows me asking him directly, am I under suspicion? At one point he did say yes, but he would not say what I was under suspicion for. I asked him for clarification, am I under suspicion for this fire, to which he refused to answer the question and continued to insist that I provide my ID to him. At no point did he introduce himself. He never gave me his name. He never even so much as said, what is your name, but rather simply demanded my ID under threat of arrest for obstruction of justice. I did not comply to his request, as at that point I did not feel that he had legal grounds or authority, or that he had given reasonable legal justification for acquiring the information from me in such a manner, at which point he proceeded to arrest me for obstruction of justice. My rights were never read to me. He also, unfortunately, I couldn't continue recording because at this point he had gotten me on the ground. My phone, of course, had luckily landed in the grass and not on the hard cement, so it didn't damage the phone. I was able to continue to recording some audio after that, which you could hear me asking for his badge number, which I got no answer on. He accused me of being on outstanding warrants for some pretty serious crimes in Ontario, insisting that I was an alias. So basically, he's just coming up with anything to try to get me caved into pressure to meet his demands. Eventually, I was released without charge. At that point, I could only conclude that he knew that his charges could never stick, so he wouldn't bother actually charging me with anything at that point, despite his threat and obvious arrest of me, which was not legal, which I later filed a complaint with the Office of the Police Complaint Commissioner, posted the video both on Facebook, where I posted it initially, and later uploaded it to YouTube. And once that started going around, the story started getting out, and Josh Steffler of Freedom Free for All interviewed me on that. I know Times Colonist picked up the story. CFAX had me on the radio show. CTV News Vancouver Island talked to me about it. So it definitely started getting some attention, which is good, because this is a symptomatic of a larger issue. It's not an issue with one cop, but rather a policing culture as a whole.
So you knew at the time of your arrest that this officer was acting unlawfully?
At the point where he started threatening arrest, absolutely.
Yeah. And then sometime after the arrest, you filed a complaint, and that eventually went to the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I did provide him with the YouTube link, and as well as BC Civil Liberties Association information to substantiate my claim.
At that point, early on, what did you expect the discipline for the officer would be, having not only assaulted you, but also searched and arrested you unlawfully?
Well, honestly, I didn't expect he would be disciplined, mainly because I've come to expect that with police complaints in general from everything that I've seen on them. However, I can say I'd certainly had hopes that this would not be the standard case, that the video evidence would speak for itself. and that something would happen beyond, gee, you made a mistake. Um, Ideally, as I've mentioned in previous interviews, I would have liked to see criminal charges or anything you found criminally guilty of doing. But of course, that didn't happen. So I guess I expected something more to be done, but at the same time, I'm not surprised by the result either.
It sounds like it's being passed off as an error or something the officer misunderstood about the arrest process. Is that it?
That's exactly it, and it clearly he did not understand the legal limits of when it is legal to arrest somebody versus when it is not. And that's, at this point, it is pretty much, well, gee, he didn't understand, so we're not going to worry about, any kind of prosecution or criminal charges. Because, oops, he made a mistake. Well, people make mistakes all the time and wind up in court.
So if the officer made an error or misunderstanding back when it happened, we should assume that he knows now what the proper procedure is, right?
Well, I should hope so. It's unfortunate he doesn't have much of an incentive to retain that knowledge in his next encounter.
Yeah. He must know by now, at this point, he was acting unlawfully when he arrested you in January 2016. You agree?
Absolutely, yeah.
Has the officer attempted to reach out and apologize to you for his error or reached out to you to explain his misunderstanding about the arrest process?
Not at all. Haven't heard from him since the arrest.
When a reasonable person makes a mistake, they have no problem apologizing for it. You agree?
Oh, absolutely, I agree. In fact, I think it's the only reasonable course forward. You screw up, apologize, you make up for it.
Yeah.
Someone's saying, what can I do? I'm sorry. How can I make it up to you?
Yeah. Especially someone in a high power position of public trust. You would expect that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Has anyone from the Saanich Police Department, like the chief, apologized at all to you or even reached out to you in any way, like a letter at least?
No, outside of the formal legal requirements, no, not at all.
Now, if this same officer was to do this again in the near future to another citizen, what are the chances he would claim it to be an error or misunderstanding?
Well, I'd say he has a pretty good incentive to do so. I mean, look what happened with this.
Yeah.
It says, I didn't know. No real discipline, right? So where's his incentive to own up to its mistakes?
Yeah. Now, if you committed an assault on another person, what sort of legal action would you be facing?
Well, there'd be arrests, there'd be criminal charges. All my information would be put onto a police file. I'd have a criminal history. So anything that requires any kind of criminal or background check, my name would come up as committing an assault if I were found guilty. Even if I was found innocent, I'd still have a police record there that would come up saying, well, you were accused and prosecuted. There's jail time, there's consequences to my family. Being the sole provider for my family, my wife and children wouldn't have their rent paid, they wouldn't have food to eat. Like, the consequences are pretty serious for someone just a single person, let alone someone who's responsible for providing for the means of livelihood for their family.
Mm-hmm. Did the investigation suggest that the officer that arrested you faced similar legal action?
Oh, not at all. It was more of, oops, he screwed up. Yeah. And that's pretty much all there was to it.
Yeah. The Saanich sergeant that investigated this incident is from their professional standards branch. How did the investigation go, and did it meet your expectations?
Well, it was extremely slow. I really felt that they were doing everything they can to delay and stretch it out as long as possible. Under the Police Act, they have 6 months to finalize their investigation and have it submitted to the discipline authority. They sent it back for further investigation right at the tail end of that 6 months. Conveniently, the investigating officer was on vacation for another several weeks, at which point there was absolutely no timeline under the Police Act for him to complete the additional steps, which I guess was reviewing case law in similar situations. The only timeline in place at that point was they had 10 days to get back to me after he submitted his final report for the second time. So it seems to me they were just stretching it out as long as they could. So for me, quite frustrating. When I started this, they told this is to be completed under timeline within 6 months. That was the expectation set. they pushed it back as far as they could, and I'm convinced that they're doing so just to stretch it out as long as they can, because they know I sent an email to Saanich City Council saying that they could be held civilly liable for the actions of this officer, making it clear that I'm not simply going to ignore it. I'm not going to sit back and wait for them to do something, that I expect action on this.
Do you feel like the officer that assaulted, searched, and arrested you got away with breaking the law?
Oh, absolutely, he got away with it. I mean, imagine if I physically accosted somebody, threw them, locked them up, and confined them against their will, and then started searching through their things. Like, imagine the police response to that and how I'd be treated as a civilian. The fact that he has a badge and a gun should not be an excuse for him not to be treated on par with the average Joe citizen.
Yeah. Who protects the public when the police break the law?
Sadly, seems nobody. I think the public is responsible for protecting the public. The problem is the public fear the police, and that fear all too often holds them back. And can you blame them? I mean, they've got a monopoly on force. They've got they've got the power there. They've got the weapons. I mean, you don't see average Joe citizens walking around with their own guns for protection.
Yeah.
And it's not only is it not socially acceptable to do that, it's in many cases it's not legal to do that.
Yeah.
The citizens, I believe, we have a responsibility to protect ourselves from the police when necessary. Ideally, we should be working with the police, but you know what they say: when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. What happens when it's the police that are the threat?
Yeah. Are you aware that the OPCC is largely made up of ex-cops?
I wasn't aware of that till you mentioned it, but honestly, I'm not surprised. I mean, it just kind of seems like the natural flow of things when it comes to anything that's set up or endorsed by government.
Yeah. So you probably weren't aware that the Deputy Police Complaint Commissioner is former professional standards for the Vancouver Police Department?
No. Again, not surprised.
Yeah. And are you aware that a former Saanich Police Department detective is an investigative analyst for the OPCC?
I am now. Again, not surprised.
Yeah.
In fact, it's probably not the only one. There's probably lots from several departments.
And so you likely weren't aware that this former Saanich Police Department detective, now analyst for the OPCC, has a son who wears a badge under the Saanich Police Department?
Not at all.
That sounds like a conflict of interest, wouldn't you agree?
It could absolutely be a conflict of interest big time, especially if it's your family that's getting reported on.
Yeah. Did the OPCC suggest to you initiating legal action for your charter rights being violated?
No, not at all. In fact, it's something that I brought up with them at one point. I just casually asked them, what are my legal options outside of this investigation? Can I sue for this? And they kind of just said, oh, well, you can, but let's not talk about that. Let's focus on the investigation, kind of thing. As far as any legal counsel I've received, I was able to sit down for about half an hour with a criminal defense lawyer to discuss possible legal actions, which I've certainly kept items of that conversation in mind, but definitely not something the OPCC seem to care to discuss.
Is it possible then that the OPCC might actually be in place to prevent municipalities from getting sued over police misconduct?
Well, I think they're absolutely doing that. Whether or not that was the purpose of them being put in place to begin with, I think they're absolutely doing that. I think that they won't tell you how long you have to notify the municipalities of legal action under the framework of the law. They won't, because I mean, they told people that how many cities would be getting sued, how many police departments would be getting sued. It seems to me that they're more set up to be the bouncers at the bar, so to speak. Keep people out from suing them.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. And my name is Dan, and I'm Not So Silent. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you again soon.